What we have here is a self-portrait. The mechanism of experience. So here you think you're a person, you're just a machine. Sorry to say. But it's not you that's the machine. Of course, you are our awareness. But this thing that we take such pride in being personal, and there's, romantic and imaginative and creative, it's just a machine, just operating. Perfect cause and effect functioning. This is a giant Vasana generator. Woo! Behind curtain number 2. Okay? Yeah, and there's always the thing, if you do win the boat, the refrigerator, then you got to pay taxes on it. So these people win these things on game shows, and then they get whacked with the taxes when they get back home. They can't afford the taxes on the thing they won for free. So it throws them into debt. It's really kind of a weird thing. But that's what happens to us, right? Because here's all this great instrument to use at our disposal, and then what do we end up doing? We just dig ourselves further into the hole of suffering. Or we got the taxes we have to pay off. We accrue merits and demerits, and we got to pay those off. There's the price. Experiential credit card, or cosmic credit card, so to speak.
What's behind the third curtain?
Yeah, I know. What's it? Awareness! Yeah. Okay. So now let's talk. We've established all this. Okay, the anatomy lesson's kind of over. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't. But now we're going to see, how does this all apply? Because we've seen this just perfect universal order. And that's wonderful, the grand scheme of things. But we're not operating the grand scheme of things. It does help to trust the grand scheme of things. Again, that's the merit of going over that, as you start to see, oh, it really does operate. So it might set your mind at ease that I'm not in control. I can take what comes. I see that the mechanism is self-sustaining. It's going to operate in its best interests. And so I can let go. What comes, comes. It neutralizes my vasanas. I don't have a binding need. I can accept those things as prasad. I make my offering. So karma yoga, perfect. We have to apply it until it becomes spontaneous. But that awareness, that understanding that we've just gone through might make it a little more spontaneous. So that's on the grand scheme of things. Now we come to, what's our experience as a jiva? How does this thing play out? Here we got this instrument. Now you say it's on a macrocosmic level, of course, it is a giant vasana generator, but for us, for our purposes, it's what generates our vasanas. And how does it do that? It also is the instrument by which we neutralize the vasanas, so that's the good news, right? We're the problem and the solution. So it can work either way, but invariably, afflicted with avidya, self-ignorance as we are, we're going to first use it to generate lots of vasanas that then we get the pleasure of trying to neutralize. All right. You wouldn't be able to do spiritual practices if you hadn't built up all these vasanas. So isn't it great? What the hell would you do with yourself? You're going to go to the office? You wouldn't get to come to India? You wouldn't, This gives you something to do. So yeah. It's good. Okay. So, all right. So we've got these. Now we talked about how manifestation occurs from the top down. Now we're going to kind of look at things from the bottom up, so to speak. So all this has been thrown out of the causal body. And even our vasanas are stored in what we call our personal causal body, our microcosmic causal body. So even those are coming out of a causal body. They are first unmanifest, then they come into subtle manifestation, give rise to a thought, a feeling, even a sensation. Now I got to itch my leg because I feel an itch. And so we act. So it's all coming out of the unmanifest. But the instrument that we're working with and expressing it all through, of course, the switchboard that it needs to operate, the hardware of the computer, so to speak, is composed of these elements. and they compose all the other objects that we draw impressions from. If you remember that, there must have been a, state of pure potentiality that held all the possible impressions there were. But once we get the jiva interacting with the world, it's going to start collecting certain of those impressions. And then it creates its little vasana bundle, we might say. Let's analyze it as if there's a beginning, and so we generate this vasana bundle, and then from there, our actions fortify some vasanas, neutralize others, the whole thing happens. So anyway, starting from the elements then, we come in contact with objects. So let's say to use the simple example again, we taste a chocolate ice cream cone. Does everybody know what chocolate ice cream is? Okay. So we taste a chocolate ice cream cone. Most people like that. You'll have to sort of play along, but it works the other way too. Even if you dislike it, that creates a vasana. So from that, we can look at it both ways. So if you like that taste, then you create a pleasurable vasana. And if you dislike it, it creates an unpleasant or a painful vasana. Now note that pain is different from suffering. Suffering is actually associated with both pleasure and pain. That comes later. You probably a lot of you have an understanding of that, but if that wasn't clear, we'll be coming back to that. But for now, we'll just say we got pains and pleasures, and those create impressions. So they're stored in the causal body. And then they would come into the subtle body as raga dveshas, likes and dislikes. If they're binding in nature, we tend to think of them as raga dveshas, really intense likes and dislikes rather than just preferences, things we can enjoy but we don't have to have, or they're painful but we can deal with them and it's not a big deal. And then, of course, it filters down into the physical body where we take actions to get these things, and we have experiences and all that. But, okay, so the chocolate ice cream cone comes in, and, okay, the impression is in the causal body, stored in the causal body. So, of course, we need eyes to see the chocolate ice cream cone. We need ears, I guess, to hear the person say, what kind of ice cream would you like, I'll take chocolate. We need, I don't know if you smell ice cream or not, but that can play a role. Skin, of course, we need that sort of holding the bones and all that bit together so we can hold the cone. And when we goes into our stomach, we need something. Otherwise, we just dribble out all over. And then, of course, we need a tongue to taste. That's the big one in this case. Okay. So at any rate, we see that we have that gross body that can perceive. It takes in the data. And you'll notice these little arrows here. It might be tough to see from the studio audience, but there's arrows going in because these elements come into the perceptive organs. Remember, the perceptive organs are in the mind. So they're actually located in this, but the instruments that actually these would seem to suggest eyes, ears, nose, tongue, mouth, those are in the body, but the ability to see and taste and touch and all that, that's in the mind. Okay? Now we need physiological systems, of course, because if we don't have those, the machine isn't going to be operating. So those are there. So anyway, this data comes in, and what the mind does is it integrates the whole thing. Because now we see the cone, we taste the cone, we can feel the cone in our hands. A big part of taste is actually the tactile, feeling of it in the mouth. Do you know that they've come up with a new taste? Fat. I know, it doesn't compute, does it? There's actually a taste that they are labeling as fat, it doesn't taste very good itself, but when you put it with other things, it makes all the other things taste really great. That's why Julia Child said, like, butter, 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 butter. Put butter in everything like they do here, and oh my God, it just tastes great. You know, it clogs the arteries and you die young, but who cares? Because it was a really good tasting experience, right? But, okay, so yeah, there's this. Along with that, there's another smell, or, you know, among the smells we might. Do you know that popcorn is a smell unto itself? They can't put it in any other category. Yeah, so there's like, you know, I don't know, bitter and acrid and popcorn. That's weird. Okay, well, anyway, so we get this in. So the data comes in, and then the mind has to integrate it. Puts all this together, so we have the experience of eating an ice cream cone. It's not like we get a taste randomly over here, and then a feeling, and then you know, it just puts it all together. And it wonders, what is this? This is the doubting function. Now it's, you know, based on our experience, we already sort of naturally know it's a chocolate ice cream cone, but the basic idea is every time you encounter something, the mind goes, what do we do now? Because it's not the deciding part. It just takes the data in. It doesn't know what to do with it. So it then, you know, following this trail of activity, throws it up to the intellect, says, what should we do? So the intellect can make decisions, has that power. So it kind of deliberates, oh, it's chocolate ice cream, and, you know, it looks soft, and it looks, you know, whatever. It does what it does to identify what it is. It determines, is this a friend or a foe? Or is it neutral? You know, can I just hang around? Do I need to get rid of this? Do I need to, you know, and you can think of that in terms of any object. It doesn't need to be a person assaulting you or something. Do you like it or not? You know, I mean, okay. But even that, it needs further consultation. So it consults the causal body. Or, not to confuse the matter, but in some presentations, when they just present the causal body as avyakta, unmanifest, then we could get chitta in there, the memory, the deeper memory that stores the vasanas. But I mean, it's half dozen of one, 12 or 6 of the other. So, anyways, it consults the causal body. For our purposes, we'll say it consults the causal body. The causal body goes, well, when we encountered this before, it tasted good. Or, the last 12 we've encountered have seemed to add an inch or two to the waistline. So maybe we should not partake of this. So it gives the intellect its advice, its consult, and then the intellect says, okay, we're going to have it or we're not. And the intellect, as you can see from that last example, is always free to defy the causal body. Because the causal body is pretty ironclad. I mean, it pretty much knows. It's not really riddled with avidya, but I mean, in a way it is, but it gives a pretty true read, but then, intellect goes, well, I want it anyway, so fuck it, who cares? Okay? And then that sends a message back to the mind. Can you hang on for a few minutes so we can make it through the cycle? And then we'll have a break? Okay, because we don't want to break it in midstream, because now there's a big whammy coming. All you feelers. I gotta see how I look here. Okay. So the ego is actually part of the intellect. It's just a thought in the intellect. So you thinking, oh, I'm this person, taking credit for all this. All this has happened, then the ego jumps in and says, oh, I did it. Okay? So the intellect then decides, and it directs. It says to the mind, do this. Because the mind can't decide, but the mind can activate. So what we call emotion is actually a sensation, a physical sensation that we're feeling that's putting our body, our mind as well, but our body into motion to respond to the object. energy and motion. Now that's not to like defuse it and, don't have feelings and they're just a mechanical thing. But that's the truest understanding of emotion. It's actually a symptom of this decision that has occurred, and it's activating how I'm gonna respond. Oh, I love you. I'm gonna come up and give you a hug, or I'm gonna, and I get that feeling of embracing something, wanting to embrace something, or I'm scared. And there's physical symptoms that go with these, right? I mean, we feel these things in our anatomy. I have a gut feeling about this, right? But that's really what's going on. That's the emotion. So ego takes credit for it. Well, then what is it? What is the energy putting into motion? The active organs. Now, we needed the active organs as part of a thing. You got to have a hand or whatever to eat the cone. So they're involved in this. But now we're going to react to it. And I guess that is probably, if we trace it right to the very basic aspect of it, then that's where the hand clutches the cone and the tongue licks it, or, whatever. Okay, so then we get the active organs involved. And they exert an influence on, they themselves, well, the organs are, of course, subtle, but they exert an influence on the instrument, which is composed of the elements. So your body feels a certain way. And then also it influences the further reaching elements that are out there. You lick the ice cream, there's less ice cream than before, or, whatever. And then because of that influence, it sends a different, sometimes it's very slight, sometimes it's quite profound, but a different, different data to the perceptive organs, and the whole cycle just plays through again. And it just keeps going on and on and on and on. We never think about it. It's happening. It's not like we just analyzed it and you're just plodding through. Obviously, it's just... It's like when we get what we want. Immediately, the mind shuts up and we feel happy, so we think it's the thing that gave us the happiness. So it's so fast, we never catch the trick. Same thing here. This is all happening so fast, that it just keeps going over and over, and we never stop to analyze it. That's just, life's a series of experiences, right? This is how experience happens. True, now we've broken it down, but what's absent in this whole big picture? Well, if you've been around for a while, you know the answer. The self-evident self, that is the substratum of the whole thing, remains unrecognized. It's nowhere to be seen. Yet it's the very heart of it all. If we want to use heart, it's the substrate. So we just fall into this. Now, every time we act on a pleasure, the vasana becomes fortified. It becomes a raga, or it's more likely to be a raga, which is a compelling desire. Now we got to have it. So like we say at first, I taste the ice cream cone. Hey, great. That's pretty good. Next time one comes around, you happen to be out at the park with a friend, there's a vendor. Oh, I'll have a chocolate ice cream cone. Great. But, if they don't have it, and you're not even thinking about it, it's not a big deal, but it appears, great. Then the next step, that's pretty good. I've had it a few times. It's starting to strengthen. I think I'll go to the ice cream parlor and get an ice cream cone. Or I'll go seek out the vendor the next day I'm in the park. Then, they sell this at the grocery store. Like I can get a bunch of it and put it in my fridge or freezer, and have it. So then you start doing that. And then it's like, oh my God, it's a 2-for-1 deal. I'm grabbing a bunch because I like this stuff and I don't think it's just going to go away. And then pretty much, we eat more and more of it. We can't stop. Pretty soon, as they say, the ice cream's eating you, or the cigarette's smoking you, or the booze is drinking you. Because you're just a slave. The drivers let go of the reins, and the horses are just running away with the chariot, going down whatever roads of sense pleasures that they want to go down. And you're out of control. And then, that goes on for quite a long time, lifetimes. And finally, one day, you start to wise up, because after all, you are awareness underneath the whole thing. And there does come to be a point, which we'll talk about later, since all vasanas have an arc of coming into manifestation, coming to maturity, and then moving out of manifestation. They arise and they mature and fructify, and they start to decay and die, so to speak. That process goes on. So somehow, the vasanas start being neutralized, and we get enough momentum in that direction that we start seeking another answer, because none of this is really working. We just get fed up. And then we have to start the real work of how do we neutralize these in bulk, But that's the whole thing, and that's where we find ourselves. So the vasanas, and again, vasanas are things we want and things we don't want. Ragas, likes, compelling likes. Dveshas, things we don't want, compelling dislikes. So we're constantly in this play of trying to get the things we want, or keep the things we want, or eliminate the things we don't want, or avoid the things we don't want. And that's what consumes our life. That's just what our whole life becomes. That's what we're doing 24/7, to some degree. All right, so there we find ourselves, mired in samsara. So now this is the last thing. This is where the suffering comes in. Because the pains and pleasures, big deal. That doesn't end for the jnani, that cycle. The compelling vasanas are neutralized, so I don't have to have this. But the way that plays out is the same, yes. So it continues on and on and on, but you're not attached to having to have this result or avoiding that result, so you're not suffering anymore. As I say, pain and pleasure persists, some degree of each, but suffering ceases. Okay? There's nothing wrong with the dance unless we really take it to be real, and then, oh my God, we beat ourselves up for every little misstep and get caught up in the whole jungle of movements and whatnot. Okay?